Welcome back, folks, to WrestleRant. I'm Graham G.S. Matthews, where I give my in-depth analysis of all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network, coming off the months of December and January, where I reviewed every installment in Royal Rumble history. Going forward through the next few weeks, I'll be reviewing every installment in No Way Out history, starting with today's show, the 1998 installment, No Way Out in Your House, hailing from Texas. So, pretty wild show, to say the least. I mean, I talked about it when I did my review of the 98 from Houston, Texas, to be specific. But I talked about it a little bit when I did my review of the 98 Rumble a few weeks ago. And you're only really going to like these 98 shows if you're a big fan of the Attitude Era. Like, a lot of this is chaotic shit. Not that they're bad shows. I mean, I've seen far worse pay-per-views, like the early 90s, mid-90s, sometimes in the early mid-2000s and recent years. These aren't bad shows, but a lot of these pay-per-views in 1998 are directed towards, if you were a big fan of the Attitude Era or if you're enamored with the Attitude Era, these are the shows for you. I'm not a huge fan of these shows. These weren't bad shows. It's just that a lot of the characters, a lot of what went on, a lot of these weird-ass gimmicks, not bad gimmicks, just strange gimmicks, weren't for me. But still a good show nevertheless. Kicking off the show in tag team match action was the Headbangers taking on the Artists, formerly known as Goldust and Mark Marrow. The only real story going on here was that Mark Marrow was still with Sable. I mean, he was treating her like shit, I believe, and then Goldust was with Luna. So those two kind of came at odds at various points, ultimately costing that team of Goldust and Marrow the match, giving the win to the Headbangers, who came out wearing like tights and shit and all this weird ass stuff, like wearing dresses and skirts. That was their gimmick. They were just a weird tag team. I'm not a fan of that, but I just thought it was weird. The match was what it was. It wasn't really that good of a match. It was there, but the ending, I thought, with the feud furthering between Luna and Sable was really well done, leading to that match, I believe, at WrestleMania 14 in 98. So at least it would lead somewhere, and you would get that storyline progression in there. So the match really isn't anything special, and it probably went on a little longer than it needed to, but the ending was well done, and it did plant the seeds for what was to come at WrestleMania the following month. So after that, for the Light Heavyweight Championship, Taka Michinoku defending the belt against Pantera in a very good match. And typically, when I think it was the 98 Rumble, or maybe it was the 97 Rumble, but one of those Rumbles we had like a 6-person tag team match with people, featuring people from like CMLL or AAA or whatever it was, and it was really, it's hard to get invested in these matches where you have no idea where these people are, or like who these people are, and it's different. Like, I'm not, I'm not too knowledgeable about the Attitude Era and a lot of these gimmicks. Like, even the Godwins, I know who they are. I haven't watched much of their work, but I know who they are. Pantera, I had no idea zero idea who that guy was, other than, he was a contender for the Light Heavyweight Championship. But in this match, it really wasn't about a feud. That was kind of what the Light Heavyweight Championship division was centered around. Not feuds, but rather just the matches and having great matches. That's why they copied WCW, because, WCW did have that amazing in-ring action with their cruiserweights, with, amazing in-ring action with, Dean Malenko, Chris Jericho, Rey Mysterio, Eddie Guerrero, Juventud Guerrera, all those other guys. But they also had great freaking feuds, too. You watch, like, the Rey Mysterio DVD and the Rise and Fall of WCW DVD. Had a lot of great feuds over the Cruiserweight Championship over in WCW. The Light Heavyweight division, unless, I haven't seen any of the Raws from that time, maybe they did have feuds building up to these matches. It just seemed like the matches were there, But it's hard to complain when the matches were very well wrestled. This was a very fun match, and personally one of my more favorite matches from the show. But a well-done match, and Taka Michinoku is still the Light Heavyweight Champion. So after that, another tag team match pitting the Godwins against the Quebecers, which was not a good match. The Godwins were not good workers. The Quebecers were gone shortly afterwards. This was just not a good match. Very sloppy. No pun intended, because the Godwins were like, sloppy pig wrestlers and shit like that. That was their gimmick. But like a poor man's Wyatt family is like technically what they were. And I know the Wyatt family came later, but that's what their gimmick essentially was. Not really a good match at all. Probably, again, should have gone a little bit shorter, went a lot longer than it needed to at 11 minutes. The Godwins won, just not a good match. These two didn't have good chemistry at all. The Quebecers weren't good, and thankfully they were gone not too long afterwards. But after that, for the NWA North American Heavyweight Championship, Justin Bradshaw, so JBL, going after the gold against the then champion Jeff Jarrett with Jim Cornette in his corner. A lot of interference here. They had a lot of NWA influence throughout a lot of their pay-per-views in the late 90s. For whatever reason, I don't know why, Jeff Jarrett just didn't really fit in that picture, although he would put the championship on himself in the years that followed, and in WCW, and as well as in, WCW and TNA and whatever else, GFW. Not GFW. I don't think he's put any belts on himself in GFW, but that's just Jeff Jarrett. But the match was all right. I didn't think it was a bad match. Again, went shorter than I thought I got an appropriate amount of time, but the fact that the other matches went longer than this one was a bit odd, considering this was a better match than the previous 2 tag team matches I talked about. But this was all right. The DQ finish protected Bradshaw. I thought that was a bit strange, considering Bradshaw was headed towards, with the run with the APA and Ron Simmons. Not immediately after this, but in time as it progressed and whatnot, as time would go on, he would join, with Ron Simmons, with Farouk, whatever, as part of the APA. So to protect him and try to make a single star out of him was kind of oddly timed. He wouldn't become a big breakout single star until 6 years later in 2004 when he won the WWE Championship, surprisingly enough. But this was an all-right match. The non-finish was understandable because, again, they wanted to protect Bradshaw, so that was all right. And the finish, the match itself was pretty good compared to the previous 2 tag team matches, which weren't really much of anything. So after that, another tag team match. This was a very tag team heavy show. A War of Attrition match. Now, I don't know what the stipulation was or is. I don't even remember, but it was a massive 10-man tag team match pitting Ken Shamrock, the Disciples of Apocalypse, and Ahmed Johnson against... Oh, no, I'm sorry. I'm messing that up. No, those teams, I'm thinking of the main event. I'm looking down here to the main event, but those teams, yes. The Disciples of Apocalypse, Ahmed Johnson, and Ken Shamrock against the team of the Nation of Domination, which consisted of, at that time, Mark Henry, Kama Mustafa, D'Lo Brown, The Rock, and Farouk. Just a very chaotic match. If you're into that kind of thing, you'll enjoy the hell out of this. If not, maybe not so much, but it's still a pretty good match, again, compared to everything else on the show. Very, very chaotic, but a lot like the opener, where the match itself didn't do much for me personally. I did like the planting of the seeds and the furthering of the feud between Rock and Ken Shamrock, leading to their Intercontinental Championship rematch at WrestleMania. They had that one title match at the Rumble '98, which had a very strange finish, as well as their match at WrestleMania. It was kind of the same finish, which I talked about in my Rumble review. It was very disappointing that they did the same finish that they did at the Royal Rumble, rather. But this was a nice little filler match for the feud to have Shamrock force Rock to tap out and grant himself, earn himself another championship shot at WrestleMania. And you also had the planting of the seeds for the dissension being teased between Farouk and The Rock being later leading the Nation of Domination as its leader, and Farouk kind of paving the way for his exit out of the group. So, successful on various different fronts here. The match itself was good, and you might enjoy it based on what your interests and likes are and whatever. And the match was chaotic, to say the least, but I thought the planting of the seeds and building towards the rematch between Rock and Shamrock was good, building to that match at WrestleMania for the IC title, and, like I said, paving the way for Rook's exit from the Nation of Domination. So after that, Kane versus Vader, and this was en route to Kane's match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania. Taker was still nowhere to be seen after being, burned and buried alive at the Royal Rumble 1 month prior, so we had this minor filler feud with Vader, who didn't really mean as much as he once did. Not even in WCW, but when he first came into the WWE in 1996, a little over 2 years earlier at the Royal Rumble. He was a force to be reckoned with. He was a monster. He had that great match with Shawn Michaels at SummerSlam that year for the WWE Championship, and they didn't do much with him after that, in 97, which was weird. I mean, even for a guy his size, he was very, very talented. He was over with the audience. By this point, he was over huge as a babyface, as a fan favorite. But still, it always boggled my mind they never did more with Vader during his time with WWE. But still, Kane and Vader were logical opponents, both size-wise and gimmick-wise. So it was a pretty good match. I enjoyed it. Paul Bearer got involved a few times. And it later, like I said, led to, Kane won here, picking up a credible victory over Vader to build himself some, credibility going into the match with The Undertaker at WrestleMania 15. After defeating Mankind at, Survivor Series, moving on to Vader at this pay-per-view. So a pretty good match. I enjoyed it for what it was. And like I said, building up Kane as a threat to the Phenom on the grand stage. So we get to the main event, a non-sanctioned 8-man tag team match, pitting Triple H, the New Age Outlaws, and Savio Vega, who is fairly random, and obviously it was, because it was supposed to be Shawn Michaels. And of course, this was before the new D-Generation X was born. The New Age Outlaws did not join the D-Generation X, did not join DX until after WrestleMania, of course. And after WrestleMania is when they joined the group. So before this was just kind of paving the way, or just kind of planting the seeds, or experimenting with them as part of DX. Unfortunately, Savio Vega was not a part of DX when during that incarnation of the group after WrestleMania. That was X-Pac instead. Oh shucks. But anyway, so Shawn Michaels was taken out of the match because he was not... this was towards the end of his first run with the company, when his back was killing him after the Royal Rumble, and that was what kind of, triggered the end of his career for 4 years. So it was, it made sense. Even in an 8-man tag team match, I guess they really didn't want to take any chances with him fucking up his back even more before WrestleMania, so they took him out of the match, even though he would have been limited to an extent. Their opponents were Chainsaw Charlie, Cactus Jack, Owen Hart, and Stone Cold Steve Austin. So a lot of great chemistry between Jack, Chainsaw Charlie, and the New Age Outlaws, again building towards that match at WrestleMania, the dumpster match between those 4 guys, Jack, Chainsaw Charlie, and the New Age Outlaws, so good stuff there. Austin, who was red hot going into the WWE Championship match at WrestleMania against Michaels, was able to pick up the win here for his team. His team obviously won here, so that made sense to give him some more momentum going into WrestleMania. So that was good. And then Owen Hart was randomly thrown in there, and you can never go wrong with Owen Hart. So a good match from him as well. I believe him and Triple H would have a match at WrestleMania too. So everyone here involved, except for Savio Vega, who was just thrown in there as a random replacement, and that was kind of a letdown. You would think it would have been a bigger name because they kind of hyped it up all night long, but it was what it was. A very, very entertaining 8-man tag team match. Easily the best match of the entire show. Great stuff built towards WrestleMania. A great match in and of itself. And the right winners won. The right superstars won. So good stuff all around. So that closes out the 1998 installment of No Way Out. In your house. The In Your House pay-per-view, No Way Out in Texas. No Way Out of Texas is what it was called. But it's the No Way Out series. And this was technically the first installment in the long-running pay-per-view of No Way Out in the years that followed. But that was that. Great main event, and really, if there's any one match from the show that is worth checking out, it is that match. There's not many other matches on the show that I would say, oh, that's a great match, check it out. Maybe the War of Attrition match, which was good to an extent, and what it meant for WrestleMania. Everything else wasn't technically must-see, but I thought it was still a decent show overall. Definitely not like a waste of your time to check out. And as I said earlier, if you're a huge fan of the Attitude Era and you like that chaotic, brawling, all that, non-stop action, and not non-stop action as in total wrestling. I'm not talking about TNA here or anything like that, but I'm talking about like just craziness and chaos and whatever, and all those crazy-ass gimmicks. And this is the year for you. These are all the pay-per-views for you. I'm not, I don't consider myself a fan of that. I don't consider myself a fan of the year of 98 in WWE. Not to say it wasn't good. It's just not my personal cup of tea. Still a lot of good pay-per-views, so I would check it out. I thought it was better than WrestleMania. I didn't think WrestleMania 15 was that great, just my personal... Or 14, rather. 14. Even 15 wasn't great either, but 14 I didn't think was amazing. Had a few good matches here and there. But anyway, decent show. Check it out on the WWE Network. And on Saturday, I'll be breaking down No Way Out 2000. There was no 1999 show. They went from 98 to 2000. And that's what we'll be doing here in WrestleRant in the weeks that follow, in the weeks to come. We'll be breaking down every installment in No Way Out history, including the 2012 show, which came, 3 years after the pay-per-view officially came to an end in 2009. They brought it back for 1 year only in 2012, which was not a good show. I did not enjoy that show very much at all, but we'll still be breaking it down here on WrestleRant in the month of February, which was, of course, hosted, it, of course, played host to the No Way Out pay-per-view for many years, going into WrestleMania, dating back to 1998. That's it, folks. Thank you again for watching. Thank you again for listening. I always appreciate your support. Continue to show your support by liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. You can find me on Twitter by following me there at WrestleRant. Find me on Facebook at facebook.com/Graham.Houston.Matthews, and check out the website at nextairwrestling.net. All the links are in the description box below. So until Saturday, guys, for my review of 2000's No Way Out, I am Graham Matthews, and I'll catch you folks down the road.